not the Max Stern Athletic Center, but on the Yeshiva University campus. We are here getting ready for the NCAA Division III selection show. We are here with senior for the Maccabees, Hillel Banash. You guys are coming off a conference championship yesterday. What was that like?
Listen, it's always cool to see your guys perform, really go out there and perform for the Max Live faithful. People like Akiva Poppers, who really built this program from the ground up. Shout out to Akiva Poppers. And so really it's right before Purim. Shem really gave us help and chizik, and great feeling overall.
So obviously last game was the last time in the Max Stern Athletic Center for you, I mean during a game. What would you say has been your favorite memory in the Max Stern Athletic Center as a Mac?
Well, it's always good to perform under the bright lights. But I would say my favorite memories are just every day, 6 a.m., putting in work with my boy Max Zackheim, brother for life. Those are really the best memories. It's all about the grind, the journey, not the destination.
Words of wisdom from Hillel Banash. And finally, I don't know how much you've been following the D3 world, but do you have any idea where you guys may end up, where you want to go? We're going to bring on Akiva Poppers in just a moment, who may have a little bit of a better insight in terms of projections. But you have any thoughts?
Whatever Akiva tells you, it might not be true, because Texas, I've heard, it really is in the considerations right now. I would say more than likely we're going to Texas.
I just want to clarify, St. Thomas is in Houston, not Dallas.
It's still Texas, but I mean, we all know no matter what, Akiva will agree with me on this, we will end up in Indianapolis. So, see you there.
All right, that's Hillel Banash, senior guard for the Maccabees, 4-year player. And now we're going to bring on former three-year player? And now we're going to bring on legendary Max Live alumni and former guest and former D3 analyst, D3 voter, current D3 analyst, Akiva Poppers. And now, Akiva, can you walk us through kind of how this is going to work, how they pick the bracket, what we're going to be watching, and then, we'll get into maybe Maccabee-specific stuff later, but just a general overview of what's going on today.
Yeah, okay, so in the field, there are 64 teams. Last year, the NCAA switched to a mathematical calculation to determine which teams are in, besides for those who win their conferences. So there are 43 automatic bids from 43 conferences, and then 21 teams who make it who did not win their conference, and that's based on math. And so we already know who those teams are, even though the NCAA has not announced it, thanks to public knowledge of the formula, especially utilized by the D3 datacast Snyders. So that data is all available publicly, and we know who those teams are. And then those 64 teams can be organized 1 through 64 to roughly have a picture of where each team belongs. But unlike in Division I, there is not a 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15 format in 4 different regions. There are 4 different regions. However, within each of the 4 regions, there are 4 groups, 1 playing 4 and 2 playing 3. Within each of the pods, they are called, pods of 4. And unless needed, due to whether, in theory, the one might not have submitted hosting forms, or in theory, the one is too far away from one of the other teams in the pod, but some other team in the pod is able to be within, I'll get to that later what that means, is able to host who is within that mileage limit, then in theory the one might not host. It seems that we have no cases where we would either need to or have to do that this year. And so roughly the top 16 teams in that mathematical calculation will host this year. There is one question mark between the number 16 and 17 based on geography, which I'll get to soon, but roughly those top 16 teams will host. Roughly the teams between 49 and 64 will go on the road to those top 16. Not going to be perfect. There will probably be some team like 46, 47, 48 who's going to go on the road, some team like 49, 50, 51 who's going to not be on the road in their first game, and instead will be in the neutral site 2 versus 3 within the pod game. Now in terms of that geography that I was speaking about, the NCAA will pay for any flight for any team which is more than 500 miles away from the team that they are playing at. However, they obviously will try to avoid that. So they will pretty much only fly teams as needed. They will try to maintain the geography as needed, but they pretty much will only fly teams as needed. And so the what that typically means is that almost everyone is busing. The NCAA, the mileage limitation for busing is 500 miles. So the NCAA, for example, will not be sending Yeshiva to Emory, Georgia to face Emory, to Atlanta, Georgia to face Emory. That's just not going to happen. There's no need to send Yeshiva to Emory, and that's more than 500 miles away. So speaking of Hillel Binash's talk about Texas earlier, there are St. Thomas, Texas is top 4 in the mathematical calculation, so they will definitely host, assuming they submitted paperwork. And there are 2 other teams in Texas, Mary Hardin Baylor and Trinity, Texas, who are within 500 miles and are not within 500 miles of anyone else besides for St. Thomas, Texas. And there's a school in Mississippi, Belhaven, which is only within 500 miles of,
Then I think Emory is also.
Yeah, they can get to other schools. No, I think other schools can get to. They're the only school which
they can get to other schools, but they're the only school that can get to St. Thomas,
Texas. Yeah, there are other schools like that are in the tournament, such as Mississippi University for women, which has a men's team, which can get to other schools too, but cannot get to Texas. So even though Belhaven can get to a couple other schools, which might host, such as WashU and Emory, they're the only other school which can get to Texas. So we're not going to Texas. Belhaven is. The NCAA is not going to waste a flight if they don't need to in order to preserve geography or to preserve seating. So with that said, Yeshiva is going to be within 500 miles almost definitely.
And just to go on that point, before we get specifically to Yeshiva, you mentioned 16 versus 17. Obviously, you have Redlands sitting at 16 in California, which for the D3 world is a little bit more of an isolated place. What do you see the committee doing there? Do you think they're going to make a California pod at Redlands? Do you think they're going to fly Redlands out somewhere? What do you think is going to happen?
Okay, so the question basically is, are there going to be 2 flights or 3 flights in the first round? There's a conference called the Northwest Conference in the Seattle, Oregon area. Conference winner there was Whitworth this year. They're not within 500 miles of anyone, so they have to fly. There are 2 teams in California, which is an island, which are Claremont Mudd Scripps and Redlands. So there are 2 possibilities for what the committee could do. They could have Redlands host as the number 16, have Claremont Mudd Scripps in that, and not have to fly, Whitworth fly, and then fly out some other team to the West Coast. Or they could fly out both the California teams and the Washington team, so that'd be 3 flights. Personally, I view the most likely scenario as them flying out, so an extra flight, with the reasoning being that the only way to preserve the seating at all throughout the rest of the bracket, due to the fact that there are going to likely be 5 hosts in the Midwest, and not so many schools in the Midwest to make up for that. D3 is very Eastern heavy. So there are going to be lots of schools needed to play in the Midwest, and fact is, if you have no California or the Whitworth team flying into the Midwest, you're going to really struggle to get teams into the Midwest, and you're going to need to manipulate seat lines significantly in order to do it. I think they're going to fly the California teams into the Midwest to occupy those spots, as well as Whitworth also to the Midwest. But it is possible for them to have a California pod and bring one East Coast school into there. However, even if that happens, it'd be extremely unlikely that it would be Yeshiva, because most likely the 2 versus 3 matchup in that would be Claremont Mudd Scripps against Whitworth, as Whitworth is roughly 40th in the mathematical calculation and CMS is roughly 26 or so. Yeshiva at 45 would be a mismatch for the 4 line there, and if they were to do that, they would most likely fly roughly the 50th team in the mathematical calculation from the East Coast of California.
Yeah, now moving into obviously Yeshiva specific as we're getting ready to start the stream here, what are your initial thoughts? Looking at the bracket, I know you published your own mock bracket. What do you think are the realistic options for Yeshiva, both in terms of, because we're likely on a 3 line, like you were saying, who we're playing, and then where we could be traveling to?
Great question. So in terms of where we could be traveling to, really anything within 500 miles is an option. The NCAA generally will roughly put together a bracket similar to D1. So in D1 you would have the best team in the country playing the worst team in the country, and then the 2 middle teams also in that grouping. However, that's not necessarily how this works at the D3 level. So, for example, you could have 1 30, 40, 64, right? It doesn't have to be 32, 33 right there in the middle. And especially once you're dealing with teams outside of the one, who they will try to protect, as a rule of thumb, they'll try to protect the top few seeds in the bracket. So let's say you have the number 9 team. So the natural breakdown of that would be 9 against like 55, and then 25 against 40 or something like that. It could also be 9, 55, 17, and 48. It doesn't have to be that the middle grouping is 26 and 40. So while the NCAA will roughly try to keep each pod even, it doesn't have to be even in a perfect snake order, 1 through 64. With that said, there are some most likely scenarios that I think, just in terms of what I'm seeing, I think it's most likely that Yeshiva will end up playing at the host site of a school which is in kind of the middle grouping. So not like Trinity, who's number 1 in the NPI, which is the mathematical calculation. Most likely not Mary Washington, who's number 4. Possible Randolph-Macon, who's number 6. I think once you get to the grouping of Endicott at 7, Wesleyan at 8, Tufts at 9, and Christopher Newport at, I think, 11. I think that's the grouping that makes the most sense, and because Yeshiva was at Tufts last year and there was some backlash, I'd be surprised if that happens again. One additional note which came into play last year when it comes to all this is that when submitting hosting paperwork, schools will note what times they are able to play. And schools might say they cannot play a 1 o'clock game on Friday, which is most likely when Yeshiva would be playing. So that could rule out some hosts without our having the knowledge that that is the case. I'll add that Montclair State, which is nearby, I don't know if this is the reason, but speculation, Montclair State was an option for Yeshiva to go to last year, which made sense as a seed line, even more so than Tufts, and the committee sent Yeshiva to Tufts, even though Yeshiva had played Tufts earlier in the regular season, which is not a rule that they have to avoid that, but they try to, when they can, avoid regular season matchups. They only have to avoid conference matchups in the first round, but they try to avoid regular season matchups, which makes me think that perhaps Montclair State did not note that they were able to host in the early window. If that's the case, that would obviously rule out Montclair State from hosting Yeshiva this year as well. But Montclair State could be an option. And then lastly, that team which could take Redland's spot, Hood, that could be an option as well. So I think those are the schools that are most likely that Yeshiva would end up at. I'd say probably the grouping of CNU, Christopher Newport, which is a Norfolk area, Newport News, Wesleyan, Connecticut, which is, I believe, Middletown, Connecticut.
I think Middlebury and Middletown, yeah.
Middletown, Connecticut, maybe like 3 hours away. Would be another definite possibility, even though Yeshiva played Wesleyan this year. That potential matchup would only happen in the round of 32, and Yeshiva did not go to Wesleyan last year. And Endicott, which is about 45 minutes north of Boston. I think those are the 3 most likely places I'd give maybe like a combined 60% or a little bit under that chance that happens. Now, as the show is starting up, but they're not ready to release stuff yet, so I'll keep talking for now. In terms of possible teams that Yeshiva would play, most likely it'll end up being a team which is on the 2 line near the top of the 2 line. So the teams that line up in that area, Hood, if they don't end up hosting, Mount Union, Roanoke, but I think it most likely that Roanoke will end up at Emory due to geography, but that's possible. I'd say the most likely teams that they'd end up playing would be Babson, Franklin and Marshall, and Catholic, who line up right in that area. NYU does as well, but again, I think they would avoid that matchup. There are a few other teams too, but I think those 3 of Babson, Catholic, and Franklin and Marshall are most likely. Mount Union definitely could happen too, but hey, we could be totally wrong. I was totally wrong last year. I was quite right in 2022 though. So.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to the selection show starting right now, so we're going to send it over to that. But stay tuned, because once the Macs get announced, we'll break down the matchup right after this.
A better way to understand the selection process.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. You know, in the past, obviously, the results that happened on Saturday and on Sunday, you could kind of guess as to where teams might have fallen then in an updated set of regional rankings. But you'd have to, it would still be a guess. Now, you know, within moments of after a game ends, where you ended up in the NPI. You can generally understand before a game what you need to do, or what opponents need to do, or what other teams around the country need to do. If you were on the bubble on Sunday and you needed 5 of 5 to go right in order for you to get into, a bunch of dejected student athletes sitting in the rooms across the country waiting to hear their name and not hearing it. So I think there's I think there's a lot to be said for them.
Well, this has to be your busiest time of the year, but also the best time. It's, you anticipate seeing the bracket and the matchups. What will you be watching for as the committee tries to put an equitable bracket together while also dealing with the geographical restrictions?
Yeah, that's always the question in Division III, right? There's a budget, and that leads to not flying and not necessarily always number 64 to play number 1, number 63 to play number 2. How does the committee balance that? I think we'll look forward to seeing how that looks in the bracket. I think that geographically, the way the 64 teams worked out and the way the seedings worked out led to a lot of real good possibilities to make this bracket balanced and sensible from a seeding standpoint. So look forward to seeing how it shakes out.
All right, we look forward to hearing from Pat throughout the show. It is time now to let you see the field, and we'll start with the upper left-hand corner of the bracket. Again, teams are geographically paired whenever possible. 16 sites will host first and second round competition Friday, March 6th and 7th. The first school to recognize one we already mentioned is a host, Trinity, Connecticut. A repeat for Trinity and the NESCAC, a leave no doubt. 80-55 win over Wesleyan. This after they knocked off Tufts in the NESCAC semifinal. Darrell Carugo leads the team in scoring and faced Trinity with 20 points in the final. Jared Berry chipped in 19 to go along with 4 rebounds and 3 assists off the bench. This is a deep team in the NESCAC final. Trinity held a 27-4 advantage in bench points. They will take on Utah College. The automatic qualifier and qualifier rate always special to recognize a first-time NCAA participant. Congratulations to our Lovelace, the Empire of the tournament. Five players drafted to Utah. Babson is in a defeated week 8-56 of the new MAC title. 27 points for Thomas Fernando. A lot of offense on this show. How about Timothy O'Toole, the new MAC defensive player of the week recently? Had 13 rebounds on Sunday. Rebounds, third, and steals. Their opponent, St. Joseph's Spain, great athletic conference champion, the second seed once beat the league number 1 seed St. Joseph, Connecticut. How about these numbers? In that game, they shot 51% from the floor, 43% from 3. Joseph with 11 for 12. Moving on, we see Redlands, who grabs an automatic qualification spot from the Southern California Athletic Conference. Their opponent is 16-12. Susquehanna, Orlando.
2 seconds in front. What's the next front? What would you run? And
Down 11 for Raleigh for a 76-72 win to get into the tournament.
That is?
Here,
Yeah, you can see the TV and the players.
Number 1 team, over the weekend. Title games. Went to the Blazers. 103-98.
You can't see the TV.
Overtime against York, PA, a game that Javon Yarbrough will never forget. 44 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists also in that game. They became the school's all-time leading scorer and assist man. How about that? This is their 4th NCAA appearance. Still looking for their first win in NCAA play. Vassar will travel to Hood. 20-8 is their record. They are waving the Liberty League flag.
Your phone has a built-in tripod.
Time to check back in with Pat Coleman. We'll do this every 8 schools. 2 hosts so far. Pat, what stands out to you about the schools in the matchup?
Because the Wi-Fi is not good in here.
Well, one of the things, of course, about our reigning champ, Trinity, you talked
The
about
network
those
thing.
2 wins in the NESCAC tournament. Those avenged the only losses they had in the regular season. And you mentioned that they're a very deep team. They still do the thing where they bring in 2 separate shifts. They got a bunch of guys.
Because of the lighting, it's because of the network.
Hugo, right, first trip to the NCAA tournament. The number 7 seed in the Empire 8 Conference Men's Basketball Championship. Not a lot of conferences even bring 8 teams to their conference tournament anymore.
The lighting is bad, yeah. Remember to go to the other side?
Just
try not to get the window.
St. John's,
Go to the other side.
really coming along
cord getting in the windows. There's a lot of like light bleed from the windows, causing it to like flare.
Okay, can I walk across the front or you want me to walk across the back?
Walk across the front.
I want to touch quickly on three more teams.
Get my coat off. Sure. Hold the phone for a second. Switching in here.
Is the sixth guy.
Samsung's phone has a built-in trap on my
That's a really deep squad.
Here's also just the
Good
phone.
to see them make their
Really just put it on the table.
Frank Marcin, he's in his 37th year as head coach. We talked about the rally in the landmark final. They had to win a tiebreaker with Grady to get into the conference tournament in the first place. And Javon Yarbrough, 8 games of 30 points or more this season, but he can hurt you other ways too. 6 games with double-digit assists, 4 games with double-digit rebounds. That guy can do it all.
Great work, Pat. Take a break. Catholics will take one of the 21 at-large selections. This program won the national title in 2001 and will participate in this event for the 17th time in program history. They will try to win against Western Connecticut State University. They have a 21-6 record. The Little East Conference champions. Tufts is your host for this 4-team setup here at the top of the screen. They fell to Trinity in the NCAA semifinals. For the Jumbos. Individually, Scott Jamesi tops the team with 16.4 points per game. Also, number 1 in the conference in rebounding. The school's all-time leading rebounder. Now, he was not available for that game against Trinity. Tufts does play tough defense. Teams are shooting just 38% from the field against the season highlights of Tufts, who will host action coming up this weekend. They will welcome in Penn State Harrisburg, who defeated Karn 72-71 the United States Championship on Saturday. Freshman point guard Andre Thomas converted the go-ahead basket with 34 seconds remaining. The program is making its 4th NCAA tournament appearance after winning 4 conference championships in the last 6 seasons. The Lions had a tough schedule. They faced 4 fellow NCAA tournament teams this season. I mentioned NYU at the start of the show. They are in again as Senior Day celebration over the weekend as they defeated Brandeis. 26 points for Brandon Rubin, 18 for Luke Kalaja. 4 straight wins, now 14th, or I should say 4th straight appearance and 14th in program history. Griggs Gettysburg, 51-47, their win over Johns Hopkins gives Gettysburg the 8th spot out of the Centennial. They took the first lead.
I'm not trying.
That game and never again trailed, earning a 2nd straight and 7th appearance.
Samson, give me a tripod.
The host here, yet another NESCAC program, Wesleyan, Connecticut, number 1 seed in the conference tournament, did advance to the final, as mentioned before, falling to Trinity. Zach Walensky scored 17 in the semifinals, 22 in the final. Rebounding is key for the Cardinals. They ranked 3rd in rebound margin, 6th appearance in the tournament. Wesleyan will host Lehman. They've won 15 in a row, first time back in the tournament since 2004. Shout out to Stephen Schulman on winning the Conference Coach of the Year award. Back to Steve. 4 host institutions, 3 coming out of the NESCAC, 2 on this page, and 4 molds who could have some familiar matchups down the road.
Yeah, that's certainly possible, but you know, the nice thing is those in this institution have all kind of wins, so that if they do beat that one team in round of 8, which will be in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Wesleyan, of course, been there before. They were there last year. You talked about California. It's the title back in 2001. They had the reunion of that team. This is how long ago that's been. They're 25 years. This team has really been running Peter Galene of late. He's kind of broken out over the course of the last half of the year. He's a real sharp three-point shooter. Penn State Harrisburg, certainly a team that has made upset runs in the NCAA tournament before. Tufts is a tall order, and that's a big trip, so we'll see how that works out for them. At NYU, this is not only not your father's NYU, it's not your older brother's NYU, it's not your 2025 NYU either. There's basically nobody left from that team that made the national semifinal, made the national championship game, including new head coach Malik Fareed has really put this team together. It's been a great run for the Violets this season to see them get to 17-8. Gettysburg, you know, they won 13 of their last 14 games. They have a new head coach who didn't start until October 6th, which is less than a month before practice starts, well less than a month. And when he got there, the guys were on fall break. So, but he's done to put this team together and get them to this point is really impressive.
25% of the field has seen their name. We move on to the bottom left-hand portion of the bracket. Mary Washington is in and a host 24. A 1,000 player of the year. They will try to win against Worcester State, 15-12. Upset winners of the match. That win against Worcester State.
Maybe Western by 5?
Whatever school start with W. WPI is in second straight year to be in this show, 16th time in program history. Justin Bowler has a well-rounded season. 4 games, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists. WPI has a 21-5 record. They'll face Amherst, another at-large and extremely balanced team. Players averaging 10 distributors. Claremont Bud Scripps is in this year's team. Yo, Johnny Cash!
They didn't let Cat be on the team.
Johnny!
Yo, we want this. We want Claremont. We want this game. We want Claremont.
Johnny, you want it.
Come on.
Good Monday, Aurora, 23-5. 67-66. Aurora has been turned 12 times. Host here, star next to the name of Wisconsin postseason title earning
what's the cause?
just with that automatic bid. And shout out to Sam Greiger, 33 points in the title game, a scoring average this season of 25.8 points per contest. They will take on Hope here for the 30th time. MIA automatic qualifier. Basically 72-65 win against Trine. Head coach Greg Mitchell raised his team's grit after being down double digits early. Big spark off the bench from Brady Miller. He scored a season high 14 points, 6 of 7 shooting in the biggest game of the season. So time to check back in with Pat. The headliner is Mary Washington, number 4 in the NPI. Is any potential upset?
No, I think it's just any of these teams from Massachusetts, I think
Problem is the lighting because of the window. Okay.
Mary Washington got the runs of the regular season.
I was told to go back here by Poppers. Why? Because this way you can also see the TV. I'm gonna go to the back corner. Huh?
Oh, you moved, so I got a phone call.
Your phone has a built-in tripod. Your phone literally has a built-in tripod.
Put him back, put him back. No, pop it.
Your phone has a built-in tripod, by the way.
Yeah, but the camera sucks.
So what? It's better. It's not like this one's much better. And the lighting is terrible. It doesn't matter how good the camera is. Just put your phone flat down on the table. It'll be good. No, I'm saying you can put it standing up like that. Sandra, I'm saying just fold it in half and have it standing up like a little laptop.
Is Wisconsin Stevens Point. It is that large appearance in program history. We still welcome back first time in the tournament. Stevens Point since 2018. Josiah Butler leads the Pointers in scoring 18.6 points per game. Also a 90% free throw shooter. 4-time national champions. The last one coming 11 year. They will play Mary Hardin Baylor, the American Southwest Conference champ, 20-7. The record coach well in the MPI.
Did you speak of it?
Why did we just bring a camera and plug it into the phone?
Is their opponent now according to the numbers?
Yeah. What? What's he gonna go over there? Okay, fine. Okay. Alright, Samson. I'm gonna start moving now. This way I'm not running across.
Four guys that figures for Coach Sam Patterson in his first year in Division III, and just Minnesota. We were joking last night that if this matchup I'm not sure there's something telling you we did this closer to St. Peter to Gustavus Adolphus than Bethany Lutheran would be by staying in their own doors. And then at University of Chicago, you talked about Shane Fagan, grad transfer from Wesleyan's a guy who's been deep in the tournament before. Nick Roper, grad transfer from Illinois Wesleyan. But the guy to keep an eye on and see what his health status is Ahmed Kenna. He missed 4 games this year down the stretch. He did return for the game against WashU on Saturday. He only had 3 points in 31 minutes. That's a guy who will really be key to helping Chicago in the tournament.
Halfway home through 3 right now. Smith Water. We'll discuss 32 more teams, and on the right side of the bracket, the host institution is Emory. An incredible season. One of the reasons for their success. The #1 assist turnover ratio in the country. Just last week, Ben Pierce became the school's all-time scoring leader, truly a team honor. How about head coach Jason Zimmerman, who said, after the record-breaking performance, the most telling part of him is setting the score record. See how happy his teammates were for him. Emory will play Mississippi University of Women, and for the first time ever, MUW defeated Webster 77-76. And how about this quote from Dean Burrows? He said the NCAA Power Index gave us a 0% chance heading into the semifinals of making this tournament. Despite the numbers, the analytics, you'll never be able to measure the heart of the group who continuously keeps coming back and responding. Love seeing those highlights, love seeing history made for the W men's team again in the tournament for the first time ever. Roanoke is in an incredible 59-58 win in the ODAC championship. Gets the 8th spot in the field, their second straight appearance, but first conference crown for the Maroons since the 1999-2000 season. They will play Rhodes. Third win for Rhodes this season over Trinity was special for the tournament. Jackson Humphrey, one of the heroes in the final, scoring 55 points. Fifth time in this bracket and first appearance since 2017. Our next pod includes Bates, the 5 seed of the NESCAC tournament. Fell to the top seed Wesleyan in the semifinals. Kravitz, Elliott, Brady Coyne. The team's double-figure scorers on Saturday. They started the season strong. Won their first 9 games of the season. Now in the tournament for just the second time in program history. The other came 11 years ago, back in 2015. Yeshiva is in. Championship scoring 36 points. Now the host here is Montclair State. Program record in wins this season. Most NJAC wins in program history for a single season. Along with win streak among the best starts in program history. Ball movement is bread and butter for the top-ranked team in Region 4. Montclair State leads the country in assists per game, 21.5 per contest at last report. They will welcome Maine Farmington in the North Atlantic Conference automatic qualifier, first conference title since 2010. Highlights on your screen, Zach McLaughlin in the clincher had 19 points. They averaged 87 points per game as a team, and Zach averages 26. Jason Reynolds also the top scorer. He has 17 points per game. Your turn. Pat Emery, number 2 in the NCAA, worthy of being the first school we discussed on the right side of the bracket.
Yeah, I think last year they were one shot away from national semifinals and lost in overtime at Wesley. They played a first round against the teams around the years. You have a good association already. There's a teacher in the Texas. They know exactly sure you guys NCAA tournament teams. Shout out to MUW and look forward to their possible MUW.
Montclair's right here. It's great for us.
Well, they hasn't won that title in 26 years, like you mentioned, but they did get a large selection last year. They got to the round of 16. Jacksonville averaging 16 points a game. They just have one senior, Marcus Morgan. Yeshiva, really interesting story. 22 points for 2,500 points in his career. They played a bunch of NCAA tournament teams, played a bunch of them close, did not win any of them. But they all have a shot against Bates. And yes, for Yeshiva fans watching, the NCAA will have a modified game time on Friday afternoon in accordance with Yeshiva's religious observances. Looking at Bates in that, their first time in the tournament since 2015, second time ever. And Montclair State has lost twice to TCNJ. In the course of the last week and a half, they've got to be hungry. They are not looking to let that happen, especially after losing at home in the NJAC title game on Saturday.
Moving on, John Carroll is in. First year in the North Coast Athletic Conference is one to remember as John Carroll takes the league's AQ spot. The Blue Streaks shot 53% from the field, 48% from 3 to knock off Denison.
Yeah.
It is the third straight year. Blue Streaks have had an automatic qualifier spot. Luke Chacon was the conference tournament most valuable player. Also this season broke the single season scoring record. 680 points.
Guys, we'll figure out all the logistics and we'll let you know, obviously. Tomorrow morning, you guys,
Conference. Just end it?
No, we're gonna do analysis.
Oh, okay.
Getting to drive 30 minutes and be at a game. Okay, go over there and then we'll do analysis.
Is it easier for you to drop it up?
Obviously.
You need to plug this into the phone, so it makes it easier to drop it. All right, so welcome back into the booth here in the Sky Caf in Belfer Hall at Yeshiva University. For those who missed it, it's just been announced that Yeshiva will be playing Bates at Montclair State. The official pod is Montclair State is the host. They will be playing against Maine Farmington, and Yeshiva will be playing Bates at Montclair State. Akiva, just your initial thoughts. I think similar to last year, this is something that we probably weren't expecting going in.
Okay, so I will say in my predictions, I had Bates at 2%, so it was there. I didn't forget about them. Like I didn't have to go to the other column. Okay, Bates 2%, and Montclair State hosting, I had 5%, so it was there on the sheet. What? Yeah.
Well, when you put the whole tournament on the sheet,
I put others still had 5%. Anyways, so the reason why it's not expected is twofold. First of all, the point I made earlier about Montclair State last year, which made more sense as a hosting option than Tufts based on the seating line, and it didn't work out. So I suppose that speculation either was wrong or that this year they were willing to play 1 o'clock game. I will say this about Montclair State: their gym is extremely small, maybe 650 seats in the place. So I expect it'll be quite full. In terms of commute, this is best case scenario for Yeshiva. It's a 30-minute drive, 18 miles out of Teaneck and right near many other.
Right near Passaic, right near West Orange.
Plenty of Jewish people should be coming to this game. And then if Yeshiva wins on Friday and it's a Saturday night game against Montclair State, it's just going to be...
Or Maine Farmington.
Right, no, I'm saying if it's a game against Maine Farmington, then Yeshiva will sell out the place in their favor. If it's Montclair State, I don't know how it's going to work because you'll have 2,000 people wanting to come to the game. The reason why I didn't expect Bates and why it was only 2% on my list is because Bates was, I think, 28th or so in the NPI, and Yeshiva was 45th. So this is actually a misseed. Just in terms of straight up seeding, Bates would come out to roughly a 7, whereas Yeshiva would come out to roughly a 12. Usually seeding will be within 1, so maybe like not 7-10, maybe 7 against 11, or maybe like 8 against 10. But to have a off this much is pretty interesting and unexpected. However, with that said, I saw it as a possibility, which is why it was still on the list. Just in terms of Bates as a team, they're from the NESCAC, which got 5 teams in the tournament. Yeshiva already played Trinity, Tufts, and Wesleyan, 3 teams from the NESCAC. Lost to all 3. Bates was I believe the 4th of the 5. Amherst was the 5th in NPI. Amherst beat Bates in the NESCAC quarterfinals and then lost in the semifinals. So this is going to be real interesting. Bates hasn't been in a tournament in a while. You got 2 teams from Maine coming down to New Jersey. Yeshiva obviously has a major advantage with the travel here. Bates has to go about 350 miles. I don't know exactly what it is, probably 300 from Maine, whereas Yeshiva is going 20.
Half hour.
Right. So a major advantage to Yeshiva when it comes to travel. And we'll see if that has an impact early on in the game.
Yeah, and just in terms of overall, I don't know how familiar you are with Bates in terms of like the basketball, but in on-court perspective, what do you think we could look forward to towards the matchup?
Oh, I've not watched Bates at all this year. I watched Bates a little bit last year, but I have not watched them all this year, so I think giving any analysis would be a waste of time.
And then just overall, as the bracket continues to be called, we're actually looking at them calling the Texas pod. I was wondering if you had any other, thoughts or initial reactions on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, so the NCAA looks like maybe their budget's a little bigger this year because they sent Mary Hardin-Baylor off to Gustavus Adolphus and broke up that Texas pod to avoid a Mary Hardin-Baylor Trinity, Texas regular season rematch, which was no one expected that. It wasn't necessary. And we'll find out in about 1 second who Trinity, Texas is playing as it comes up on our screen. I assume it's going to be Whitworth because they have to fly Whitworth out anyways. But that would be an additional flight that the NCAA didn't need to do. I was surprised early on when Claremont Mudd Scripps got sent to Hood because I figured Claremont Mudd Scripps would get sent to the Midwest. However, Whitworth is that team going to St. Thomas, Texas. However, the offset of that was Mary Hardin-Baylor flying up to Gustavus Adolphus. That is the extra Western team. So I guess eventually really made an emphasis here to avoid those rematches. As I see, no regular season rematches in the first round in this bracket as it comes out.
And that'll basically do it for us here at the selection show. Teams pretty much already left. They're excited for their matchup. It'll be against Bates. I don't know if they set a time. They definitely said it'll be early. I think 1 p.m. maybe.
I haven't heard a time yet, but 1 p.m. is what it's historically been. And one more point, just shout out to Pat Coleman on the NCAA reveal. from D3 Hoops. Talk about Mary Washington. He mentioned how Mary Washington is battle tested as they've played Yeshiva, which is probably the first time that that's happened. And kudos to Elliot Steinmetz for putting the program in a position that could occur.
Yeah, Elliot came out with another tweet today. You know, there was a lot of talk, especially in November and December, about how the MAC schedule was so tough. But that's what really brought them here, not just in terms of, getting them to win the Skyline Conference. But then when you lose to good teams, it doesn't count as much against you in the math. And it got them to kind of the seed that they were able to be. But that'll do it for us here. It'll be Yeshiva against Bates at Montclair State. We'll be in touch. You know, like you were saying, it's a smaller gym. We could be dealing with a ticket situation where you have to pre-order your tickets. We'll, as the information comes in, obviously this is, very still developing. But we will let you know as soon as possible. We'll do our best. Obviously tickets last time were a whole situation, but we're really trying to get as many Max fans to the game as possible. And really do appreciate your support. Once again, Montclair State, you can look it up. It's located in Montclair, New Jersey, which is very close to Teaneck, Passaic, all of the general places in New Jersey. So hopefully we'll see you guys out there. In terms of a Max Live broadcast, we'll be in touch. For being honest, it's probably unlikely. But, we'll be in touch once again with any other information related to that. And yeah, have a great day, easy fasts, and happy Purim.
Against UW Whitewater, wins against Mary Washington, win against Trinity, win against Mary Washington.